Hi, I'm Tannis Axten. I'm married to Derek Axten. We farm at Minton, Saskatchewan, which is about an hour and a half straight south of Regina, just north of the US border. I feel like I have to confess we are not organic farmers. I feel like we're a little bit outnumbered. But we have a common goal, is you're maybe sitting thinking, I need to reduce my tillage. We were thinking we need to reduce our chemical usage, our synthetic fertilizers. So we all kind of have the same common goal. We started attending soil health workshops quite a few years ago, and we learned that we needed to reduce our inputs. We needed to increase our diversity. We needed to have residue on the soil. We were learning all of these things that we needed to start doing. It wasn't until Derek seen Dr. Ingham speak in Montana about 4 years ago that he learned why we needed to be doing all of this. So with my background as a high school biology teacher who'd quit teaching to farm, he came home and told me about what he'd learned in just this workshop watching Dr. Elaine Ingham, and he knew I'd be excited because he said I could get a microscope. So I was very excited, and I phoned up and said, oh, I want to take the microscope course. And they said, maybe you should take more than that and maybe learn what you're looking for and why. Like, yeah, that makes sense. So I took the Life in the Soils class, which I learned so much. I didn't realize how much I didn't know. We had been so focused on the plants and what's going on above the ground, we had neglected to pay attention to what was happening within the soil. Then I took the microscope class and learned how to identify different organisms, which I really enjoyed. Then also the compost class and the Compost Tea class. I also took a workshop from Dr. Wendy Tahari on, you hear a lot about mycorrhizal fungi and arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. So I took that course to learn how to identify those within our roots and see if we actually had them. So because we don't have much time, I'm just gonna go right into what we do on our farm. We're leaning towards more of a biological method, and we knew after years of chemicals, fertilizers, you go way back, we've had lots of tillage too. We needed to restore and replace some of this biology. So compost was the way we decided to go about it. We'd had cows years ago, but had sold them. So this, we felt, was our best option. We're lucky enough, our neighbors have a lot of cows. So right across the highway, he has his corrals. So we've got a great deal with them. If we clean their corrals, we get the manure for free. So I have in the middle there the components of what we put into our compost. So we use the cow manure, and within that there's a lot of straw. We've got another neighbor that bales all our slough hay for his cows, so he'll bring me hay bales. We have a grain cleaner, so we've got lots of grain screenings around to use. The one thing I really lack is that woody component, that fungal food. So we buy wood chips and we'll get them in. Where we live, there are no trees, and if there are trees, someone planted them, so you really should not cut them down. So we bring those in to up our woody component. I've got a lot of pictures on this slide. If you start on the right, top right-hand corner, when we first started making our windrows in the fall of 2016, we made 16 windrows about 400 feet long. We would roll out our hay bales, add our grain screenings, and then as we'd clean corrals, we'd lay down some manure, go get more, put down some more, and we would then mix it with our compost turner. And in the bottom corner, we had a tank hooked to the turner, and that would add water. The problem with this was, depending where they took the manure from in that particular pile, it might have come closer to the bunk where there might have been more grain screenings, or it might have come far, closer to where they were bedding more straw. So I'd get a windrow that wasn't consistent all the way through. So I'd check the temperature at one end, and it's only 120 degrees Fahrenheit. But at the other end, it's 160. And with our compost turner, you can't turn part left and go to the other part. I have to turn the whole row. So we knew we had to do something different to have a more consistent compost pile. So this year, Derek bought a vertical mixer. So it's in the top right-hand corner. We put the bale, the screenings, the manure in there, mix it, and then do a full pass on the windrow so that it's consistent at this end to this end. And I have found my temperatures to be a lot more consistent, and it's a lot easier to know when it needs to be turned. We also, our watering system, when we had the tank on the compost turner, it wasn't putting enough water on, and we didn't want to have to turn just to add water. So Derek just added a boom to our water truck so that we can get a good amount of water. We're also a low rainfall area. We're hilly, we're dry, so the outside of my piles will dry out fast. So we needed a way to get enough moisture in there to keep it at the 50%. So with that compost, we spread it. We like to spread it in the fall. Doesn't always happen. If it has to get out in the spring, we'll put it out in the spring. Ideally, we'll spread it in the fall. We like to get it down before the snow. The picture in the bottom middle was the last day that we spread last year. It had just snowed, but it was a nice way to show the distribution of the compost on the soil. Usually put down 1 to 2 tons per acre. So it's not a lot going down, but when you have 5,000 acres to cover, you never have enough compost. So we pick the fields that we feel need it the most, and those are the ones that will get it. So with my compost, I'll look at the piles when they're finished. It's kind of like a contest to see who wins, which pile I like the best, and those are the ones that I'll use to make my compost extract. Once again, I kind of have a comparison of how we've changed things already with just getting started. In 2017, we had a 500-gallon earth tea brewer. I really liked it, but through that 500-gallon brewer, I made 35,000 gallons of extract, and it was very time-consuming. It wasn't a great way to store it. I'd have to put it in that silver tanker in the background, which didn't have aeration. So I would have to constantly monitor it, which was fine as long as Derek could come, get it for the seeder. And the extract we use in furrow at seeding time, it replaced our starter fertilizer. So once Derek got behind in putting down the extract and seeding, he had a breakdown. So I've got this tank full of extract sitting there, not being aerated, so constantly monitoring it. And I go out and I look at this one sample and it's full of this protozoa, and I know it's not good. So that's when I had to email Dr. Lanningham and like, oh no, like, do I dump this? What do I do? Well, duh, put air in it, get it aerated. And sure enough, once I just started pumping it around so it was getting air in there. Looked a couple hours later, the ciliates were gone. So without a microscope, I don't know that we could do what we do because there's just no way to monitor what's in there, and things can change. You know, it's interesting, it's fun, it's scary, but without knowing what's actually in there, it's really hard to make decisions. So this year, Derek built me a 2,500-gallon tank, cut 4 holes in the top to put our compost in. I'm still not great at making compost, so I'm not always happy with the amount of diversity. So I'll change the compost in those baskets 3 to 4 times usually before we'll pump out the extract and use it. I just constantly check it to make sure that it's got a high enough level of diversity before it goes out. Yeah, and like I said, it goes in furrow with the seed. We also make the compost teas then. We use those for foliar applications with the goal of preventing disease. Foods that we will add are kelp, fish, humic acid. A lot of the fungal foods, that's where we're really lacking. So those are the foods we like to add the most of, and sometimes I will use some molasses. So as you can see in the picture, I still make the extract, then I'll pump it through. That wooden box has a chem handler in it, and that's where I'll add the foods, get the ratios I like, and they go into the steel tank. found this steel tank actually when we were at Farm Progress Show, and I was excited about it because it's hooked to an air compressor, and it has 4 air diffuser plates in the bottom. So it bursts air, and the air goes up through, aerates the tank, and mixes it. So there's no pumps for the biology to have to go through. So there's always good with bad, though. It's also very hard to clean. So we might have to come up with a new system, but for now, when we're done for the year, we have a vac truck come out and clean it for us because we can't drain it because it's flat bottom. So that's something to think about too. We usually apply the teas at 18 gallons per acre. And because I haven't seen huge results with my tea, but we have been very dry the last couple of years and we haven't had a lot of disease pressure. But when you're married to a farmer who's used to applying chemicals, at least it gives him something to do while all of his neighbors are constantly spraying fungicide. So I think our neighbors probably think we put down as much chemical as they do, but we're just trying to get something out there that's beneficial to try to prevent any pathogens from setting in. So like I said, everything, the compost, the teas, the extracts, constantly looking at with the microscope. When I took the course from Dr. Wendy Tahari, I had to buy a second microscope. So it's fun because the kids can work with me. And when I started, it was really sad because when you take this course and you're excited to see some organisms and all you see is bacteria, it's really, really boring, especially when you're supposed to count them. It's not fun. And the kids, they weren't interested at all. But now that I can look at the compost and I'm seeing increased diversity within our soils, and you're seeing fungi and protozoa are so much fun. And even like microarthropods, nematodes, it's exciting and fun, and then the kids are interested. And even if they can help me scan some slides and let me know what they see, it saves me a little bit of time. So that being said, we're working really hard to restore the biology into our soil, but a key phrase I came up with on our farm is loyal to the soil. And everything we do, we try to think about how we can be loyal to the soil and to these organisms that live in the soil. So we went from, we were pretty efficient. We were down to 4 crops a year. And once we learned the importance of diversity and this live root, different roots, feeding these biology, we now seed 12 to 16 different crops in a year. So we also intercrop. We seed all of our broadleaf acres, we seed 2 crops together and harvest together. We do relay seeding, cover crops. The companion crops, a lot of times we'll underseed to clover so that after we harvest, we have something growing. The cover crop, sometimes you still have that down period of when you harvest, and by the time that new crop gets up, we don't have a lot of time for it to establish. We're happy if it gets out of the ground, but some years it isn't enough time. So that's where we're really trying to work with the relay cropping, so that something's growing right after we're done harvest. We have started to incorporate livestock. That same neighbor has lots of cows, so he fall grazes all of our land. And we're just doing everything we can. We want to keep that high residue in the soil to protect the biology in the soil and be loyal to the soil. And at the end of the day, if you can't feel good about what you're doing and smile, the changes we've made on our farm have made us more passionate about farming. We're having a lot more fun. It's never the same every year, but I think that's okay too. So I will end there and hand it over to Dr. Elaine Ann.